My name is Alex Norfolk. I'm working now with Borders and Globalization, and I just completed my master's degree in the School of Public Administration in the community development theme or stream. My thesis, or my final project in my program, was on the private sponsorship of refugees and the private sponsorship of refugees program specifically in Canada. And I worked with the Intercultural Association of Greater Victoria on Vancouver Island to look at ways to improve their private sponsorship of refugees program. And this basically was centered around what they call the Community Partnership Network. So they run it's called the CPN, Community Partnership Network. And it's a network of local businesses, institutions, or agencies that have all come together around the mandate of developing a more welcoming and inclusive community in the Greater Victoria region. So that is a part of the ICA's overall mission. And developing that CPN, developing that network, and improving the connections between the organizations that are involved in that network is one of their mandates. So what we found was that many of those people that we did speak to were already involved with the refugee program, either directly with ICA or in some other capacity. Some of them had been doing this, had programs that already addressed sponsorship specifically. Some of them had worked already with refugee newcomers themselves and developed programs specifically targeted to this demographic. Others weren't as developed. Other programs were quite nascent or just getting started, and they were looking for ways to develop further. We also found that these links were quite tenuous. They weren't exactly very strong between the organizations, especially across sectors. So there were some organizations that had deeper links, but those were ones that were working within the same sector. So, for example, recreation. So there was, for example, West Shore Recreation worked with Saanich Parks and Recreation, and they knew what each program was doing, but they had no idea what the finance sector was doing to deliver supports to these groups. So finding those ways where we can develop those links and to basically create a more inclusive atmosphere, a more inclusive community within Victoria. So the project that I was working on came out with recommendations for the ICA to connect those organizations and develop those links.
So which recommendations would you highlight from your research?
Well, I think the one that I feel can be done in a more immediate way and is most immediate and can be completed with maybe not as many resources as needed, because the organization is already at capacity and having the capacity to do those things. So one of the recommendations was to use technology to create these links. So there is already the University of Victoria has done some of this already as well, but in community mapping. So using software to basically create a map of different specific points that are resources for refugee newcomers and for sponsors themselves. So mapping onto it looks basically like a Google Drive kind of map, but and it can be constantly updated as you go, so people can sign in and add to it. So having a resource online that is accessible to everyone, where people can go to look for these resources and specifically find it and click on them and see what's being offered. And so my recommendation was to get the CPN, the Community Partnership Network at ICA, in conjunction with ICA, to to develop this software, to use it specifically for their needs. And maybe there can be one of these that is a database that is accessible maybe solely to CPN members to find out what their programs are and where they can kind of connect and where they can build these links. And then another one would be to a forum, an online forum for CPN members to connect directly with sponsors to look at the needs that they have and to figure out ways that they can address those needs as in real time. From my research and from speaking with the Community Partnership Network members and from working with ICA, one thing I know for sure is that the private sponsorship of refugees program works, and that it's been successful. There have been minor, or maybe minor to major challenges along the way. There still are, definitely, and there have been bumps. But as we go along and as we continue refining the program, it's only going to get better. The private sponsorship of refugees program basically allows the individual or the families that come newly arrived to Canada to have connections on the ground. It allows for quicker integration because you have these networks. You have ready-made networks who are supporting you and your family to integrate into the community. And I think it's just I would say that the Canadian model of private sponsorship refugee program would be successful in other places if it was adapted and implemented in other countries. I think it would be successful.